Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
And now I'm passing the microphone to Rinah Sheleff, and you are going to host this session. Thank you very, very,
Okay,
very
but you're going to be there to back me up, right,
I'm
Eric?
going to be right here to spotlight the people.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Shalom. Everybody knows the word shalom. It means peace. It means hello. It means goodbye. It means a lot of things. And in this case, it means welcome to this section of transformational and healing stories from the Jewish tradition. And as I was thinking about our section, and I thought that I should probably talk about Jewish traditions in the plural, because we have lived everywhere and we have brought other cultures into our tradition and adapted them and made them our own. And over the years, sometimes we've lived for a long time in one place. Other times we were busy escaping pogroms and inquisitions and expulsions and then of course the Holocaust. So we've had a very, very rich confrontation and co-option, I think, of other cultures as well. And I hope that we have enriched them as much as they have enriched us. Sometimes our people have had only the stories to sustain us. Stories that sometimes made us laugh, sometimes made us cry, sometimes taught us an important lesson, sometimes made us think deeply about ourselves as individuals and as a community and our mission in life. And some of those stories we're going to share with you tonight, today, this morning, this evening. I don't even know where we are. In Israel, it's 5:30 in the afternoon. So I don't know. And in India, what is it, 9 o'clock? Something like that. Okay, so we'll start from the earliest times, going all the way back to the Hebrew Bible, to one of our characters, one of our main characters in our lives was King Solomon, who was very wise, but sometimes needed some advice as well. And Selina Eisenberg from Montreal, Canada, is going to tell us about a story that may resonate with us not only from way back then, but even today. So, Selina, it's all yours.
Thank you for that introduction. King Solomon, of long ago, he had a captain that he entrusted his army to. Just going to put it up in gallery. Sorry. Okay. He had a captain, and that captain, his name was Benaiah. Now, as far as he knew, Benaiah had integrity, good judgment, and could train all of the soldiers incredibly well. But one day, as King Solomon was walking through his own kingdom, he overheard boisterous laughter. They were the young soldiers, but what was making them laugh so much was Benaiah. He was boasting about how he could do anything, big or small, that King Solomon had asked him to do. It made no matter what the task was, he could always get the job done. And this horrified King Solomon and angered him. And it was in that moment that he knew he would have to bring Benaiah down a peg or two. And so he went back to the throne room and he began to think what would be a good task. The very next day, Benaiah was called to the throne room. When he came in, he bent down low. "What can I do for you, your majesty?" "Oh, Benaiah, I have heard rumors of a ring and I wish to own it." I want you to find it for me. Your Majesty, tell me more about this ring, and I will make it my mission to find it. And so King Solomon bent in and asked Benaiah to come closer. Oh, Benaiah, this ring, they say that it is a ring that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy again. And this is the very ring that I wish to possess. Benaiah bent down low and said, I will look far and wide, and I will find you the very ring. In how much time shall I do this? And King Solomon, with a glint in his eye, said, You have 6 months, Benaiah. And with that, Benaiah was dismissed. The first place that he went was in Jerusalem. He went to the goldsmiths. He asked, Do you have a ring that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy? Oh, their eyes were wide and sparkling like the very gems on their counters. But no, they had never heard of such a wonder. He went to the silversmiths, asked the same question. Their eyes as wide as the monocle loop that they used to look at their gems. But no, they had never heard of such an incredible, magical ring. He went to the coppersmiths, and then from there he went to the bazaar. Well, why not? There were many merchants in the bazaar, and he asked every single one of them, Do you have a ring that can make a happy man sad and a sad man happy? They offered for him to look through all their wares, but he came up empty-handed. He went back day after day, but then it came to him. Perhaps this ring comes from a distant land. And so he went back to the palace, went to the stables, and got an Arabian horse, packed a few provisions, and off he went into the desert. Along the Silk Route, he would meet many camel traders and caravan leaders. Surely they would know. And so he asked every one that he met, had they ever heard of such a fantastic ring before? Oh, they scratched, they tugged beards, but no, none of them had ever heard of such a wonder. But they did promise that they would go back to the lands that they came from and they would inquire. Well, the weeks and the months began to roll on, and those traders that came back, they even allowed him to look through, but never did he find what he was looking for. And then he thought, maybe an even further distant land. And so he went to the port, and there he met with sea captains, seafarers, large boats, small boats. He asked every single one the same question. Look through our cargo, they said, but such a wonder, unless it's buried, we don't know. We've never heard of such a thing. He came back every day, and they went back and forth to their lands. But finally, as time was rolling on, he himself decided that he should go abroad. And when he did, sometimes he would meet with poor people. He would ask them the question, had they ever heard of a ring that could make a happy man sad or a sad man happy? And those people who were poor, their lives were fine, but if only they had a ring like that they could feel happiness and joy, well, they would keep it for themselves. And when he met with those that were of high-born society, well, they said, a ring like that we don't need. We're already happy and have more than enough. But time did roll on, and he came back to the land of Israel. And now here he was in Jerusalem, and he was empty-handed, and he was failing, for it was almost time for him to return to the palace. Again, he left no stone unturned. But on the eve that he was to return, he rode on his horse, and as the sun was setting, he was broken, sad, melancholy, disheartened. He was going to fail. And as he rode, he noticed a young boy just off to the roadside. He had a mat, and on the mat were trinkets, nothing expensive, he thought. But the young boy called out, "Oh, make my day, kind sir. come and take a look, buy something. And in that very moment, as the sun began to set, it hit those trinkets and everything began to glisten. Of course, he got off his horse. He rummaged through, but as he looked, he wept, and he wept bitterly. The boy said, "Why are you crying? I only wanted you to buy something." So Benaiah told him of the quest and that he was about to fail. When the young boy heard about this magical ring, he said, "My grandfather of many years, he's old, but he's wise, and he's heard of such things. Maybe he knows." The boy got the grandfather, and when the grandfather heard about this ring, he said, "Give me a few minutes. Perhaps I have exactly what you look for." And off he went. And he returned within about 10 minutes, holding a gold ring. It was shiny, it was beautiful. But no, Benaiah wept. "No, it's not a gold ring I search for." "Look more carefully. I believe it is." And when Benaiah looked more carefully, he spotted 3 Hebrew letters, a Gimel, a Zayin, a Yud. He knew what that meant, and suddenly all of the heaviness and all of the sadness was washed away, and a smile that went as high as his eyebrows. "Yes, indeed, this is the very ring." He put it in his pocket, and he took out gold coins, and he gave it to the young boy, he gave it to the old man, and off he went to the palace. The very next day, he arrives at the palace, and there is a feast in place. King Solomon is on his throne, and he is laughing. He is jovial. There is music, wine, food, and people all dressed in beautiful attire. King Solomon spots Benaiah. Come, Benaiah." He decides, I won't leave him suffer too long in this humiliation. Benaiah comes, he bends down low, and he produces the ring. But you see, King Solomon hardly even notices the ring as he takes it in his hand. He's still laughing and being jovial and humorous, and he throws the ring in his hand. He holds it, and then he looks, and he notices those 3 Hebrew letters. He knows what they stand for. Suddenly he is drained of all happiness. Gam ze ya'avor. He looks around. He puts up his hand. Everyone is silent. It means this too shall pass. All of the grandeur, all of the feasting, me. Someday, this palace, it will all be dust. Maybe no one will even remember King Solomon of long ago. He gets up off his throne. He goes and he bends down low to Benaiah and begs for forgiveness. "Oh, Benaiah, I made this ring up in my mind. I was trying to bring you down a peg. I heard you boasting, and it made me sad. But you have always been loyal and faithful." And then he takes off his own ring from his hand, a ruby red ring, and he gives it to Benaiah out of loyalty and friendship. And he takes that gold ring, and he looks at it, and he places it upon his own finger. And as he looks, suddenly he's happy again. And he says, "Yes, this is indeed a ring that can make a sad man, even a king, happy, and a happy man sad." And he snapped his fingers, and that feast went on. And King Solomon, from that day forward, he ruled wisely, and he always remembered the importance of Gam ze ya'avor, because everything in life, no matter how hard it is or how wonderful it is, everything does pass.
Thank you, Selina. That's a classic. That story is a classic. Does anybody want to respond, react to this story? To the teller?
Selina,
You can open your.
Selina, I always love your telling. And this story, I think all these wisdom stories travel from every place to every other place. And they have the wise person of that place, uh, portraying this story. So I had read this similar story with Akbar and Birbal, and but you made it come alive. It was so beautiful, very nice. I loved it. The way you took out the ring and then you wore the other one. Beautiful, very nice. Thank you.
Isn't
Thank
it
you,
interesting?
Selina. It was a beautiful telling. Thank you so much from Montreal too.
Isn't it amazing how we can hear a story that we've heard before or even heard in a different context, and when it's told well, it's such a joy to hear it again. Anybody else? Yes, Moira, you're
Yeah.
muted. You're muted. Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi Rinah, good to see you. No, I've also heard the story in many versions. As you just said, it never gets boring. Oh, I know that one. And Selina, what I particularly liked was how you were sort of slowly building up the tension. You could tell the story probably in 3 minutes. But like that, and your storytelling got more and more intense the more it came to the climax. So I really enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
Selina, before we go on to the next teller, would you like to say something about where you first heard this story?
Sure. So actually, the first time I heard this story was at a retreat, and it was with Holocaust survivors and chaperones who were going to be going together on the March of the Living to Poland and to Israel. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the trip was 2008. It was for Israel's 60th birthday. Anyway, I forget. But anyway, and that's where the story was told. It was told very short and concise, but it was, and we all got a wristband that said, "This too shall pass." And for me now, it's become such a profound story that even when things are not going right, or God forbid somebody passes on, I often send that story on, because in life it's true. This too shall pass, and we do move forward even in dark times. So. That's that.
Thank you. So we can see that the story is timeless, and conflict is not always about what's happening on the outside. If you're in a wartime or peacetime, or if you have money or if you don't have money, sometimes there are conflicts inside, within us, that also it helps to say, this too will pass. And we can hear from Howard Lieberman of Stillwater, Minnesota, about some of his conflicts that passed or didn't, as he will tell it. So can we have Howard?
Hi.
Howard? There you are.
As they say, this too shall pass. And a couple of things before we begin. One, I'm not a morning person. And so I've been up now trying to walk around and get my energy going. Two, I don't normally like this background, but these 3 doors behind me, I think are appropriate for this story. And it's a personal narrative story because for me, Judaism isn't just a religion, it's a people. Jewish people are more than just a religion. And this is a topic that is a metaphysical topic that has gone on and been discussed for millennia. And if you have 2 Jews in a room, you'll have 5 different points of view on this and every other topic. So these are my doors. I don't know, can I share a screen? Eric? We'll find out. I cannot.
You want to share a screen? Yes, just a moment.
No, we're doing this morning.
So, Howard, I'm going to make you a co-host.
Okay.
I removed the spotlight, Eric.
Oh, you removed it. Okay, good. I
Yeah.
tried to remove it also. Okay.
Okay.
Now, Howard, you're also a co-host. Go ahead.
I'm going to share a screen because I'm going to be using words that I'm sure may not be familiar with everyone. First and foremost is the word tefillin. We're looking at tefillin. Jewish people who are very religious will wrap leather wraps around their arm with a small box attached that points towards their heart, more or less, and straps around their head with little boxes that point up towards God, perhaps. And the story really revolves around tefillin and what is called the laying of tefillin, something that marks an observant Jew from a non-observant Jew. And so now that you've seen that, we can stop sharing the screen, and I will be spotlighted in just a moment. And I see Eric's name. I see. Hi, I'm Howard. I wouldn't mind being spotlighted. There we go. Okay, so it's late autumn of 2015. I'm trying to get just a few more points on Delta Airlines so I could be their highest tier flyer. It gives you certain benefits, access to lounges, upgrades to the front of the plane. And so I said to my wife, Pat, let's go to Anchorage, Alaska for the weekend. That's the furthest distance we can fly where we won't need a passport. It's way, way, way. And as we're flying, I don't usually read the literature that you get in a little pocket in front of you, the shop here, buy this, buy that. But I noticed that there was a little Jewish museum in Anchorage. Well, that struck me as odd because I'm a big city person, mostly. New York, Chicago, Montreal, Je me souviens, and all kinds of other places. And a Jewish museum in Anchorage, Alaska? Who knew? Who knew there were even Jews in Anchorage, Alaska? So we get off the plane, and because my wife is very nice and humors me, she said, sure, let's go to the Jewish museum. And it was a nice little museum. Lots of different exhibits in this relatively small space. And it was about, this particular exhibit was about saving Jews from the Holocaust. And it was very touching. But as an older man who has had prostate cancer, before long, I needed a bathroom. I asked the woman who worked there, I said, is there some place here where I can go to the bathroom? She said, no. But if you go next door, they'll let you use the bathroom. And next door was what's called a Chabad house. Now, you may not know what Chabad is. Chabad is a sect, the wrong word, is a part of Judaism that's very, very devout, very religious. See, Jews are divided between conservative, reform, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox. Like I said, it's a diverse group of people. But I know if we go there, the second I walk in the door, someone's going to ask me if I want to lay tefillin, because that's what Chabad do. Sometimes they're even in trucks. They call them the Chabad mobiles or something. And they ask you, hi, are you Jewish? And then if you say yes, they say, would you like to lay tefillin? It's always, no, I don't lay tefillin.
Now it starts.
But I had to pee. So we go into the Chabad house. The first thing the person says, who greets me, who is the rabbi, the chief rabbi, Hi, do you want to lay tefillin? I said, no, I really just want to use your bathroom because I need to pee. He said, but you should lay tefillin. What's with the tefillin? I don't lay tefillin, I said, getting a little bit angry. He said, and that's an affect that a lot of Jewish elders use. That's okay. You may rot in hell, but that's okay. I'm fine. He says, my son-in-law will take you to the bathroom. It's just upstairs. The first thing his son-in-law says to me, I could see it coming. I could feel the words emanating from his throat. Do you want to lay tefillin? I said, no, I want to pee. That's all I want to do. I want to pee. Like that, you know? So I do all that. And it didn't take long. And as we come downstairs, I have to ask myself, why is it that I get so angry if people ask me if I want to lay tefillin? And as we're walking down the stairs and we're walking towards where the rabbi with his white shirt and his belly that looks like it's never missed a meal and his beard that has some of his meal still in it is sitting. As I'm walking down, I'm thinking, what is it, Howard? What is it? See, when I was really young, I was a nice Jewish boy. I belonged with my family to an Orthodox shul. A shul is a place of worship for the most Orthodox. There's shuls, there's temples, there's synagogues. I don't mean to confuse you, but if I say shul, that's like, oh, that's where the really religious go. I was a good boy. I wore a kippah, a yarmulke, a skull cap. And I knew the prayers. As a young boy, I learned Hebrew. I became fluent in reading Hebrew. I didn't know what I was saying, but I was fluent in reading Hebrew. And at one point, I remember the Orthodox rabbi, Rabbi Kleinerman, he comes over to me. I'm a young boy. I'm like 7 years old. He puts his arm around me and he says, you're a good boy. You study Torah. You read like the older men. Once you're bar mitzvah and you become a man, you can worship upstairs with us. And maybe one day, God willing, he says to me, looking straight into my eyes, you'll become a rabbi and have your own congregation. Tears. Well, I cry a lot. What can I tell you? Tears. I was moved. And then a couple of years later, I don't know why, I asked my mother, I said, do you and Daddy love each other? And she laughed. I said, of course we do. Of course we do, honey. About 6 weeks later, my father was gone, left us, never to return. And a little bit of that good boy, the one who could lay tefillin, who could put on a talit, a talis, a prayer shawl, began to leave the room. When I was 14, my mother died. And at my bar mitzvah, shortly before she died, I saw her and I saw just briefly a dark shape hovering, the angel of death, I think, looking at me like that. So at 14, I was left without a family, actually without a home. And when we said Shiva, I hated the people who came by to tell me how sorry they were when they weren't a part of our life when my mother tried to raise two boys, working in a factory until her heart gave out when she was 50. And I became, at that moment of Shiva, what I would call today a devoutly agnostic, anti-religious, left-wing Jew who hated almost everybody and everything, including myself. I was never going to lay tefillin, never. I was not that kind of Jew. I wasn't that kind of person. There was no God. There was nothing but you, what you could produce yourself. I always felt like a Jew. I always felt an affinity with other Jewish people, but I was not one of them. And when I saw one of the Orthodox walking down the street with the big hats and the ones who looked almost Amish in some ways to me, I said, that's not me. I'm not that kind of Jew. And I did everything I could over the years to not be that person. We moved to Minnesota because I wasn't Jewish enough for New York. I wasn't Jewish enough because I didn't celebrate the holidays. I didn't go to Seder. I didn't keep kosher. No, I don't want to come over for Shabbat dinner, and don't ask me. None of that. Now, over the years, I softened just a little bit. When you get, as you age, you get a little bit more mellow. I traveled to Israel 3 times with my brother and a Chabad rabbi, of all people. And before I went, I always said, look, you need to know that I won't lay tefillin. I don't lay tefillin. And Rabbi Klein, he goes, he does the Jewish thing that religious men do, and religious women for that matter, and grandmothers and bubbies and mothers and all that. We're sitting in a restaurant, what's called an Oriental restaurant in Tel Aviv with my brother, his friend Rich, and me. And we start to have a fight about religion, about Chabad, about Orthodoxy. And my brother is going at me like a tiger with his fangs bared, and he's going for my throat, and he's saying, "Shame on you! Shame on you! You're hating. You're a self-hating Jew," which is a concept that if you're not Jewish, you may not understand. But if you are Jewish, it's like a prayer in the community. If you don't believe what that person believes, you're a self-hating Jew. I wasn't a self-hating Jew. I really wasn't. But at that moment, I stood up and I pointed at my brother and I said, the only reason Chabad rabbis and Orthodox like you is they want to convert you. They're like Moonies. I hate them. And as we're fighting, this man comes over and says, he said, that's your brother. Mazel tov. Quit fighting. I want to eat lunch. We leave. And over the years, I steadfastly until about 5 years ago. No, more than that. It's got to be at least 10 years ago. I say a prayer every morning, but I call a devoutly agnostic prayer. I speak to that which is unknown and unknowable, and I say thanks for who I am. And if I allow my head to be governed by my heart, but my heart to be grounded by my head, I'm a whole person. I find harmony and rootedness. And I end with the reciting of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuso, Le'olam Va'ed, which is the traditional way that you end the morning prayers with your tefillin. But I don't lay tefillin. You've heard me say that. Don't confuse me with one of those people. So I'm walking down the stairs, figuring, how do I get out of the Chabad house in Anchorage, Alaska, without having to go through this fight yet again? I walk over to the rabbi to thank him for letting me pee in his upstairs bathroom. And he starts to talk about respect. Laying tefillin is a sign of respect. He said, don't you do anything at all in the morning to set yourself right with the world? I said, well, I do this thing when I call a devoutly agnostic, anti-religious prayer. I don't pray to God. I pray to what we don't know. He listens. And he says, do you end with the Shema? I said, I do. He said, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov, Howard. You lay tefillin. It's not about wrapping leather cords around your arm or leather around your head with a box. It's about what's in your heart. It's what's in your soul. He said to me, God doesn't care. God knows. So I guess I laid tefillin. I laid tefillin this morning before I came to visit with you all. And I still think of myself as a devoutly agnostic, anti-religious left-wing Jew. But I'm a Jew. And I laid tefillin. And I am absolutely, absolutely okay with that. Thank you.
Howard, I love you. Your voice and your telling, yes, somebody wrote, it made us laugh as well as it got tears. And I loved it because, in our religion, Hinduism also, we have this thing that, everybody has a different way of expressing their love for God or expressing their beliefs. And I feel, yes, we should not judge or do anything of that sort. So I trust you. You are a Jew and I love you.
Ditto. Seriously, well said, Prakriti, sorry. And that's what I felt, It was really moving and there was humor. Everything was balanced. It touched my heart, it felt good, you sharing it with us. You are Jew through and through.
Yay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I hope some of the terminology was clear. We tried to explain things on the chat while you were telling, Howard, so that people would get it. Somebody even went, I don't know how you found the time to go and look it up on Wikipedia or something. And somebody brought out, a proper discussion of a description of what tefillin was and so on. But yeah, there's in your case, it was several times when things passed. This too shall pass, and this too shall pass, and this too shall pass until you finally found your home. I have to tell you people that Howard is he is described in his backyard in Minnesota as an over-the-top storyteller and performer, and you can see why. Over the top.
Yeah, I'd like to add here,
Yes.
Rinah, if I may. Yeah, so what you just said, he is definitely a mind-blowing storyteller. He started with that light-hearted humor, and I thought, where is the story heading? And by the time he finished the story, it was altogether different. It was so poignant and so deep and so meaningful. Thank you so much. There was humor. There were, like someone else also said, there were tears as well as smile. Everything was there. It was a complete story with all emotions. Thank you so much, Howard. I just loved your story and your telling and your emotion. And definitely, Prakriti has said it at the very beginning that you're a true Jew and we love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Howard, there were people wiping their eyes while you were telling. You didn't see it because you were spotlighted, but I saw it. Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Ah, okay, deep breath, everybody, because these stories are really going to grab you. And our next teller is Jim Brulé from, Jim, I don't even know where you were from. From somewhere in
Syracuse, New
Canada, right?
York. Syracuse, New
From
York.
New York, from New York, from New York. Okay, and Jim uh, describes himself as a magid, which is a term that describes somebody who tells transformational stories, and stories to touch your heart and to open your heart and to open your mind to new horizons. And today he will tell you a story that comes from our tradition known as the Kabbalah. Our Kabbalah is a Hebrew word for mysticism, for the mystic trend in Judaism. And there will be some surprises here. If you think you know all the stories about the Ten Commandments and what was going on Mount Sinai, wait till you hear this one. Jim, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I have what's called a modern midrash. So we are always inventing new stories and explanations for things. This is a story crafted by Rabbi Jill Hammer, who is an amazing rabbi. She is, amongst other things, one of the founders of the Kohenet movement, which is an attempt to bring out the feminine in a more earth-based Judaism. So it's a story that imagines parts of the story that are missing from the written scriptures. And since so many of you are not Jewish, just a quick introduction of the things you'll need to know. This is happening at Sinai. And Sinai is this big moment when Moses ascends Mount Sinai and is given the commandments. We're told they're black fire written on white fire, and there's lots of smoke and thunder and all sorts of great, exciting things going on. And that's central to one of the centers of the Jewish stories. And the other thing you need to know is that there were three siblings who were really kind of in charge of this time. There was Moses, who was the youngest brother. There was Aaron, who was the eldest, who was the high priest. And there was Miriam, who was a prophet, the middle sister, and this story is about her. Now, when the time came for Moses to ascend the mountain, for Moshe to ascend the mountain, people were told to gather at the base of the mountain, but not to go up, that only he would be allowed to go up. And people arranged themselves around the base of the mountain as he started to ascend, and clouds appeared, and thunder was heard, and lightning was flashing, and perhaps even a volcano was erupting. It was so powerful a moment. And everyone stood down there at the bottom of the mountain watching him ascend. Some were excited, some were terrified, some were dancing. Miriam was down there with them. Miriam, the one who was responsible for water for the people, who brought dance to the people, was standing down there at the bottom of the mountain. And as she stood there, time began to slow down. The river of time was no longer a swiftly flowing water, but it slowly turned to honey, thick and sweet and slow. And that honey slowed down more and became like amber, and everything was frozen. The women who were dancing, their legs were still up in the air. The grasses that were blowing were frozen to one side. Everything was still in that moment, except for Miriam. And she looked out towards the base of that great mountain, and she saw something changing. She saw a dark spot begin to appear. And it grew and it grew until it was like an eyelid opened. And out of that dark spot came pouring water and light. And song, she heard a song that called to her. And the more she looked, the greater that light was, and it started to pulse. The water came out in waves. And that yearning of hers to be close grew stronger and stronger. And so she stepped forward. She stepped over to the stream. She started walking up the stream across that invisible boundary until she came to the opening. And she saw before her a tunnel that went deep into the mountain, glowing with light, with the stream rushing through it, and the song filling her ears and her heart. And so she walked up alongside the stream, deeper and deeper into the mountain, until she came upon a cavern that was so huge and magnificent, it was so bright she had to close her eyes. And it took a great deal of effort to finally open her eyes. The light was so bright. She was able finally to see crystals and gems all over the walls and the ceiling, giving out tremendous light. And the song was singing in her. And when she could finally look around, she saw that in the center of that great cavern, there was a hill, a little mound. And out of that mound was flowing the stream. But even more amazing, there was a woman standing there. An old woman, a sage, with hair the color of smoke and eyes bright. And she beckoned to Miriam, wordlessly. And Miriam stepped forward. And when she got closer, the woman finally spoke and said, "Miriam, Miriam." "Hineni, I'm here. I'm present. I'm ready. Hineni." "Miriam, Miriam, what is this place?" she asked. "What is this place?" "You are in the heart of Sinai, Miriam. Your brother is up on the peak, receiving his gift. But we have a gift for you." She looked around. What do you mean? A gift for him, a gift for me? He's getting the law, black fire written on white. This is your gift. And she motioned around the cavern, and there Miriam saw for the first time chests, wooden chests, metal chests, ivory chests, every kind of chest, some simple, some elaborate, strewn all over the floor. There must have been 100 of them. "These are mine?" "Yes," said the woman. "Come, let's examine them." And they walked over to the first chest, and Miriam leaned over and opened it up. It was empty. She went to the next one with the old woman at her side, and they lifted the top. Empty again. They went to every chest, and every one was empty. And Miriam said, "What kind of cruel joke is this? My brother is up there getting the law, and you give me emptiness, you give me nothing. What is this?" Miriam, Miriam. What is a stream made of, Miriam? You know water. It's made of water, of course, it's water. No, Miriam. Water without bound simply flows everywhere. It has no power. It has no purpose. It's the empty space, the channel in which it flows, that gives it its power. Your tambourine. Miriam, what is your tambourine made of? Oh, I made it myself. It's wood, it's skin, it's rope, it's... No, Miriam. It's the space beneath the skin. Without that space, there would be no sound. It just would be dull. There would have no power. It would have no meaning. Miriam thought. And she said, if you were to ask me, what is dance? I would say it was the spaces in which arms move and feet pound and sound is sung. Said the old woman, you understand. You understand. Miriam, your gift is the white fire. Your gift is the container into which all of these things can become real and become filled with power. Because without the white fire, everything would be dull and black and without limit. Well, this is all fine and good, said Miriam. I understand, but how am I supposed to use this? That's exactly the right question. Hold up your jug. And Miriam held up her jug, and the old woman blew into it. At first, just a faint breath, like a blade of grass falling down a well. And then that breath grew stronger, and a sound emerged from that jug, a beautiful, rich chorus of sounds poured out of that jug, and Miriam felt herself lifted, and she flew back through the tunnel, back out to the base of the mountain. And the amber turned to honey, and the honey turned to water. And a great voice was heard, I am the Eternal. I brought you from the land of Egypt. And with that, Miriam took her jug and poured the water on the ground, where it formed a river, and she and the women began to dance.
Jim, you're getting amazing responses on the chat. It would be great if one or two of you could at least say in words so Jim can hear what you've written. Anyone?
I'll say, this is Sarah, and I'll just read what I wrote. Jim, I love the poetry at the beginning of the river changing from water to honey to amber, and then carrying us into this mysterious experience when everyone else is frozen, but Miriam is going deeper and deeper into Sinai. And then the importance of boundaries, which actually resonates with something that I learned when I was teaching young children. And initially wanted them to just be able to do what they wanted to do. And fortunately, I had a wise mentor teacher who said, no, what they really need are boundaries. And beyond that, just I love listening to you tell. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe we just need to be silent for a minute because
Maybe some white
so
space.
I think we were overwhelmed. This is a space for us to just be overwhelmed by the story and by your telling. And I have to say that I know that we share a great love and affection for Reb Zalman Schachter Shlomi,
Yes.
who taught me when I was in Philadelphia that the important that everybody knows and learns to read the black letters on the scroll of the Torah scroll and in the Bible and in all of the rabbinic teachings. We're very good about learning, left brain.
Mm-hmm.
But the really important places are the spaces, the white space between the letters that give us the insight and the intuitions and the deeper understanding of what that flowing river is all about.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
What a Rebbe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Jim, that was such a beautiful story. I mean, there was so much of poetry and imagery. I could travel with Miriam everywhere. And the beautiful thing that you said was, and that I've written it down and I'm going to, keep it with me, is the spaces beneath the leather that makes music, which you were talking about, and the dance and the spaces where the dancer moves her hands, her arms, her feet. That is dance. So beautiful. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
It's
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm wondering if that woman who met Miriam was an angel, a form of angel, because we know that there were angels in the Bible. And it turns out that there are sometimes angels in our lives today. And Karen Golden is going to tell us about one angel that she discovered in her life. Karen, are you there? There you are. Karen herself is an angel, somebody wrote.
Have you ever seen an angel? I have, and this is my story. The first time I heard about angels was when I was a little girl growing up in Flint, Michigan. I would sit around my piano with my 5 older brothers and sisters and my parents, and we would sing songs, and some of them were about angels. I remember one song went like this. The Lord will see you walking, and he will hear you talking to the angels in the sky. Maybe some of you remember that song back in the 1960s. And then there was this song. You're the song angels sing on a cloud far away, the first breath of spring on a morning in May. My mom used to say it was because of that song that I came into the world. Okay, you're probably wondering, how can that be? Well, my mom said that my dad wooed her with that song, and she loved it so much, she married him. And, well, of course, then I came along a few years later. So that song had a lot to do with my being in the world. As I grew older, I began to play those songs around our family piano on my saxophone. But let's go back to when I was about 5 years old and I was singing about angels. and thinking about angels and knowing that angels are up in the sky, you can only imagine how shocked and surprised I was when I heard an angel sing. I had graduated from the baby room at Temple Beth El, our Reform synagogue in Flint. The baby room is where all the kids under 5 years old went during the service, but at 5, we graduated and we got to go to the service with our parents and our families. Now, I have to admit, the service was a little boring, and so my mom used to pack a lot of handkerchiefs, and she put them in her purse, and as the service progressed, and I would sit there fidgeting, she would roll the handkerchief like this, and she would roll it and roll it and roll it. And I would become more and more and more fidgety. And then finally, when she was all done rolling the handkerchief, she would turn that handkerchief into what she called a mouse. And I would play with the mouse running up my arm at the service. And that kept me quiet. But the thing that kept me even quieter was the voice of the angel. The rabbi and the cantor would be standing on the bima. A bima is kind of like a stage in a synagogue. And they wore long black robes. And they would lead the service and they would sing. But at the end of every prayer that the cantor sang, the angel would respond. Let me give you an example. The cantor would sing, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Melokol Haaretz Kavodo. And then the angel would sing, Amen. I knew she was an angel because she did not appear on the bima. You couldn't see her. The angels, they sing in the sky, and she obviously was up in the sky. And then at the end of the service, the cantor sang, Bare pari hagafen, and the angel chimed in, Amen. Oh, I loved it when the angels sang. At the end of the service, the door next to the bima opened and the rabbi and the cantor came out to shake everyone's hands, but not the angel. Angels don't come out like that to shake people's hands. I don't even know if they want to shake hands. Maybe they don't want to get their hands dirty. Week after week, my mom folded the mice for me, and I listened to my angel sing, Amen. Or sometimes it was, Amen. And I was so comforted by her voice. As I grew older, I began to look forward to going to the temple. I no longer needed these mice. It was enough for me to be at the temple listening to the prayers and listening to my angel. And then it came time for my bat mitzvah. I was so excited. I practiced all the prayers. I was ready for my big day. And then our rabbi got sick. And I was told that a rabbi I had never met was going to be officiating at my bat mitzvah. I was so disappointed and I was so nervous. But the angel came to my bat mitzvah. And when I sang the prayers, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Lo Kol Haaretz Kvodo, her voice answered, Amen. Thank you. I was so comforted that my angel came to my bat mitzvah. After my bat mitzvah, as I was entering into my teen years and my life became kind of tough. You know how it is when you're a teenager and you're struggling with relationships and puberty and all those kind of teenagery things. When I would go to the temple and I would hear my angel, everything seemed to be okay. Amen. And then one day, when I was about 16 years old, I was driving to the temple with my mom, and she turned to me and she said, "Honey, today is a sad day." "Why is that, Mommy?" "Well, today is Beulah's last day." "Beulah? Who is Beulah?" "Beulah is the cantorial soloist at the temple. She's retiring." Beulah? I didn't want to know that my angel was named Beulah. I had imagined what she looked like, and I didn't want to really see her. I imagined that she had wavy white hair because she was kind of a senior angel. And I imagined that she wore a white robe and she had wings, but I didn't want to know that her name was Beulah, and I didn't really want to see her. And then we walked into the congregation, and the rabbi and the cantor were standing on the bema. They were wearing their long black robes, and they led the service. And my angel, Beulah, she responded with a lot of, "Oh, amen," and, "Oh, amen." And then at the end of the service, the little door on the bema opened, and the rabbi and the cantor walked out in their long black robes. And then standing next to them was this short lady wearing a light yellow pantsuit. She had light blue hair and a big smile on her face. And my mom led me over to her and said, "Karen, I'd like for you to meet Beulah." "Nice to meet you." She put out her hand and she shook mine. I don't recognize you. Are you a member of our temple?" "Oh no, dear. I'm I'm not even Jewish. I'm Catholic." "Really? Well, isn't it kind of weird for you to come here and sing in our temple every Friday night?" "Oh, goodness, no," she said. "I've been singing here for about 50 years, and what an honor it is. When everybody sings the blessings, I get to push them a little higher with my amens. I sing at the Catholic Church and the Methodist and the Protestant. It's a good thing all the services are on different days of the week, because then I get to push a lot more prayers up to heaven." "Well, dear, I've watched you grow up, and I've noticed that your mom doesn't pack those handkerchiefs anymore. You've grown to be such a nice young lady, and I'm going to miss watching you. Now it's going to be up to you to push your own prayers up." Well, I think they're having a reception down there in the library, and I can smell those cookies, so I'm going to say bye-bye. And she walked away. And now, when I think of angels, I don't only think of angels wearing white robes and having wings. When I think of angels, I think some angels wear yellow pantsuits. They have light blue hair. Some angels are even named Beulah. She was far more of an angel than anyone I could have ever imagined. You're the song angels sing on a cloud far away, the first breath of spring on a morning in May. Now remember, I told you that as I got to be older, I would join in to those family sing-alongs with my saxophone. So here's to you, Angel Beulah.
Karen, I will always remember your angel now. One with
Thank
light
you.
blue hair and not having wings. I mean, it was awesome. Your entire narration, the songs, and I mean, I was there, literally there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manisha. I want to acknowledge that my sister is here from Flint, Michigan. And my sister was in charge of the rummage sale at our synagogue. And my sister found Beulah's songbook and she bought it for me, and I have it. So I want to thank my sister, Deborah Golden Steinman, who is here. Thank you. I have her book, and when I open it, I can still hear her sing those amens.
Thank you, Karen. I was hoping I would hear the saxophone. It's Susan.
Oh, you did? You couldn't hear it?
I did. I heard it, but the whole story, I was thinking, oh, I hope Karen brings her saxophone.
Oh, great. If we had more time, I'd play more.
No, it was really, really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I love the name Beulah. Beulah of all names. You think of a housekeeper, sort of wishing around in her slippers and, sweeping everybody out of the house and, all of a sudden, Beulah the angel. It's amazing, amazing, amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Oh, my goodness. I think we have a lot of angels in this room tonight. Really, really, really. Woo! We're going to go halfway around the world and a few centuries back. We're going to hear Dr. Please be Dr. Yoel Shalom Perez, who was born and raised in Jerusalem, so already he has some points in his favor. And Yoel is a folklorist, and he comes from, he was also very instrumental in recording and archiving and publishing folk tales from various communities in Israel, especially people who came as immigrants to Israel, and also the local Bedouin. And Yoel comes from the Sephardic tradition, which he will tell you about. And he's going to tell us a story with a very provocative title, which he will share with you. It's all yours, Yoel.
Thank you, Rinah. Hello, my friends. Good evening, good morning, good night, depending where are you now. Rinah asked me to tell a story of a healing story from the Sephardic tradition. Some of the tastes and the smells of the Jews of Sepharad, of Spain. I say to her, Rinah, I have exactly the story you need. It is a story that I heard from my mother. The story about the king that was pregnant. Well, you see, I come from a Jewish Sephardic family that came to Israel about more than 200 years. And my ancestors, they lived in the region of Aragon in Spain. And the truth is that part of you, those people who live in the new world, that's mean in America, owe it to him. You ask why? Well, this is a story that was telling. One of my great-great-grandparents, he lived in Spain in the 14th century, and he was forced to convert to Christianity and was given the name Luis de San Angel, Luis of the Saint Angel. Yeah. And for 100 years, my forefathers, they lived in Spain as a family of conversos. They practiced Christianity outwardly, but in secret, they preserved their Judaism, their customs, and their prayers, etc. They were a very, very rich family of bankers. And 100 later, in 1492, there was a man by the name of Colon, and you probably know him as Columbus, who looked for funding to his trip to India. So he turned to this Luis de Sant Angel, and he received from him the funding to the trip. And after he discovered America, he sent a letter from the Canary Islands to tell everyone about the discovery. And this letter was not to King Ferdinand, but to this Jew, Christian Jew, and he thanks him for all the funding of the trip, and he tells about his adventures there. And the letter survived till today, and you can find it translation of it in the English in the Wikipedia. So if you live there in America, you must know that it is thanks to one of my ancestors. Now, after the deportation from Spain, my family came to Thessaloniki, and there they came back to Judaism openly and to their family name that they kept all these years. Now, the Jews of Spain were part of the Spanish culture, you can say, that was common to Jews, to Christians, to Muslims. And when they left Spain and came to the Ottoman Empire, they continue to talk in the Spanish of the Yemei HaBinaim, how you say, Moyen Age. Yeah? And they bring
The
them...
Middle Ages.
Yeah, Middle Ages, of course. And they brought with them all the treasures of their culture, songs, romances, stories, proverbs. And my mother, Rivka Netchinio, and my grandmother, Grandmom Tamar, they were natural storytellers. And I grew up on the songs and the stories that my mother told me and that she heard from her mother. One of the songs that my mother used to sing was a love song that says something like this. Mother, I've never seen a bird with blue eyes, red lips, and white wings like a jasmine flower. Where did this bird come from? She wants to nest in my heart. Mama, yo no tengo visto pasado con ojos móviles, rubio como la canela, blanco como el Yasemin, rubio como la canela, blanco como Eliasemin. But you are dying to hear the story about the pregnant king, so I'll not keep you in suspense. One day, my mother saw that I am very worried from all sorts of reasons. So she asked me, Yoel, why are you so worried? Everything will work out in the end. You know what? You remind me the story about the king that was pregnant. The king that was pregnant? What kind of story is this? I never heard such a thing. Well, sit here by me, said my mother, and I'll tell you the story. Había de ser, as they say in Spanish or Ladino. Once upon a time, there was a king. All the stories, you know, begin with the fact that once upon a time, there was a king. Now, this king, he was sick. He had an eye disease. And all the time, he rubbed his eyes. And he summoned doctors from all over the kingdom, but no doctor could help him. And one day, a Jewish doctor came to him. And the king said, if you succeed to heal me, you will get from me a lot of gifts. Okay, said the doctor, let me check you. So he checked him for a long time. He looked at his sick eyes. He felt his pulse, and he listened to his heart, and he examined his stomach. And finally, he said to him, my lord, the king, I'm not sure that I can really cure your eyes, but there is here something very strange. Something strange? What do you mean? Well, my lord, the king, when I checked you, I found out that apart from your eyes, you have something very rare. It turns out that you are pregnant. I'm pregnant? How comes? How it can be? Well, Your Majesty, this is a very rare phenomenon, but it happens sometimes. And in some months, you will give birth. Well, the king, he was really astonished. He was shocked. Are you sure? He said to him. Yes, said the doctor. According to all signs, you are pregnant. There is nothing to do. Take care, eat healthy food, and everything will be fine. So from that day, the king began every day to check himself, to look for signs for pregnancy, you know, to check if he has a nausea. You say bchila, how do you say nausea? In the morning, you know, or that he craving to many foods that he did not thought about them in the past. And all the time, he felt his stomach and he checked. And in short, what shall I tell you? 2 months have passed, 9 months passed, and nothing happened. So finally, he invited the doctor and said to him, what is your story? 9 months has passed and nothing happened. And what about your eyes? Said the doctor. You know, a Jew, when they ask him a question, always he answers with a question of his own. My eyes? Well, my eyes, they completely healed. Everything is fine. Well, if this is the situation, said the doctor, my remedy, it succeeded. Because, you know, when I checked you, I saw that all the time you constantly rub your eyes. So the inflammation of your inflammation did not heal. This is the reason why I told you that you are pregnant. And the moment you begin to think about your pregnancy, you did not think anymore about your eyes, and you stopped rubbing them, and the inflammation disappeared. Well, I don't know what he got from the king, what gifts, but the story of my mother, it helped me because I began to think about the story and I forgot from all my worries. And you also, if you are worried from the COVID-19, think about my story and everything will work out for the best. Thank you.
See what I mean about stories that make us laugh? Anybody have any comments about this? You can unmute yourselves.
Hi, can I say hello and merci mucho. Thanks for that wonderful story. I'm Judith Cohen. I'm in Toronto, Canada. And it was wonderful to hear this song, Yoel, and wonderful to hear that story. I'm actually a specialist in Sephardic music. So I love to hear that. So I just wanted one little note. The song is actually a late 19th century wonderful song. And so are many of the Ladino songs that we hear. I just wanted to say it was just fantastic to hear this tradition represented here and to see someone who grew up with it and hear somebody who grew up with it transmit it so beautifully. I'd love to meet you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Ande Moras, Yoel, where are you living?
I'm living in Haifa right now.
Great. Well, I should be in Israel for a conference in August, so maybe we can all meet.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, great. Hello. I met you in Seattle, and when you came for a workshop and telling there, and so nice to see you again. And I am so glad to have such a wonderful way to forget my worries. Thank you for that story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like the ring with the everything pass, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
My mother would say, I'm quelling. That's an expression in Yiddish that says, I'm just, my heart is just exploding with joy at your comment, the way that everybody here is getting the essence of what these stories are all about and how rich they are and how beautifully they've been told. So wow. Do you have patience for a little bit more? We may be going over the time, but we've got 3 more stories that I think are just wonderful. So, and one of them includes a story by me, like right now. Like right now. Okay. My story comes from the other side of Europe. If Yoel brought the Sephardic tradition, there's also the Ashkenazic tradition, which originated in Central and Eastern Europe. And one of the main features, the Ashkenazic Jewry was more or less divided among people who put learning and intellect at at the top that was the most important thing about being Jewish. And then there was another stream of consciousness created or founded by a man named Israel Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov means master of the good name, and he was a great healer. And he thought that not that learning wasn't important, but that there were other things like nature and feelings and miracles. And he created a movement that became known as the Hassidic movement. You've probably heard the word Hassid. The Chabad people that, whom Howard was talking about were a part of that tradition. Of course, like everything else in our people, there were splits and there were different rabbis who had different followers, and but anyway, they all considered themselves descendants and disciples of the Baal Shem Tov. You will hear more about them next week from Jim Brulé, who is devoting an entire session to stories about him, so don't miss that. Now, my story is about a disciple of one of the early disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, and his name was Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. Berdichev was a city, a town, a village in the Ukraine. And he was known as the defense attorney or the advocate for the Jewish people, because when people were in trouble, he would go and advocate for them to God, and he would fight for them, and he would fight for them to be forgiven. And it could be something small, and it could be something affecting the whole community. But he would not give up, and he would remind God of all the wonderful things that the Jews had done, and all the wonderful teachings that they had brought into the world, and all of the songs that they had created for him. And he often won his case. So you can imagine how busy he was and how many people came knocking on his door. And he had very little time for rest, for contemplation, for study, for a nice cup of tea. And it was just at one of those moments, those rare moments in his life, when he was just in a quiet space, and there came a knock on his door. Oi. Okay. Dragged himself up out of the chair, and he went to the door, and he opened it, and there was one of his followers, his face drenched in tears. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, you must come and help me. He said, my son is very ill. The doctors say there's no hope for him, and you have to save him. You have to save him. Well, of course, what else would he do? He pulled on his coat, and off they went through the snow on this winter's day to the house of a child who was lying in a four-poster bed, his face white as a sheet, his eyes tightly closed, his mother sitting next to him, about on the verge of collapse, people trying to give her water, tea, anything, and all she could do was groan and moan and push them away. And other friends sat and sighed. What could they do? They could only sigh. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak looked at the child, and then he closed his eyes. And the people in the room could see, they could almost see how his soul was floating up inside his body and going up through his head and out to the top of his head and going up, up, up to the heavens. They waited in absolute silence. And finally, the rabbi opened his eyes and he said, "Quick, go, run, bring me 10 beggars, burglars, robbers, safecrackers, anybody that you can think of who can break into a house." Oh, what? Who? Well, the rabbi said so. And the rabbi, you don't argue with the rabbi, so off they went. One person went to the marketplace, another person went to the tavern, and somebody else went to the public baths. And wherever they could grab everybody, in Berdichev, everybody knew who was a burglar and who was a robber and who was a thief and who was a... They had no problem finding them and bringing them back. And finally, there were 10 men. And you needed those 10 people to form a Minyan. A Minyan was the group of people who could pray together, and you had to have at least 10 of them for the prayers to go up into the heavens. And they came, and their eyes were wide open with curiosity, but also with some fear. What did the rabbi want from them? But he smiled at them, and he said, "You are about to do a great mitzvah, a great good deed. I need you to pray with me." And so they did. They prayed, and they prayed for the child, and they prayed for his health, and they prayed for him to survive this terrible disease, and they prayed with all their hearts. And at that final Amen, the child opened his eyes. He turned to his mother and he whispered, "Mama, I'm hungry." And they knew that this child would live. Oh, they erupted into shouts of joy and gratitude. They danced and they sang and they hugged the beggars and the thieves and the robbers and the safecrackers. And the mother went into the kitchen and brought them enough food for the whole week and sent them off. And they went back to their trade. Or maybe not. And after they had gone, the family turned to the rabbi and said, "We know we shouldn't ask too many questions, but why these people? Why these thieves? Why these robbers? Aren't there 10 pious men in Berdichev who could have prayed with us?" "Well," said the rabbi, "I did go up to see what was happening. I went up to see the soul of this child, and I saw that he was on the other side of a gate, a very strong gate with a very large lock. Now tell me," he said, "how many pious men do you know who know how to pick a lock?"
That's a wonderful story, Rinah. Thank you for telling it. I never expected that punchline. That's brilliant.
Who just said that? Is that Eva?
Yeah.
Eva's my friend from Cambridge. Oh, I'm so happy you're here.
Yeah, and I've been enjoying all the stories. But I
Okay.
thought I should react to yours, not least so you'd know that I came.
Anybody else? Aren't these great stories? I just love them.
I think people are spellbound because you told it so magically and you ended with such a flourish and drama, and people are gathering their wits.
You should go look up this Rabbi, Levi Yitzchak. There are amazing stories about him. Amazing stories about him. Oh, and we have another Hasidic story coming up, and it's also wonderful. And it's told about, it was a story that was told by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who was the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And he was known for his storytelling. He was known for, he has amazing stories. And we're going to hear one of them from Barry Stewart Mann, who is somewhere. Are you lurking there somewhere?
I'm here,
Are
Rinah.
you there, Barry? Okay,
Yes.
we're really excited. And Barry is from Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. So hello from
Atlanta,
Atlanta, Georgia,
Georgia.
where it's
Yes.
just early in the afternoon. And this is the Turkey Prince. Once there were a king and a queen who ruled over a kingdom with justice and kindness and generosity and nobility. And they had a son, a prince, who they were raising with justice and kindness and nobility and goodness and honesty, so that when they were no longer able to rule over the realm, he would take their place. And he was a good, good prince. But one day at a fine banquet in the banquet hall in the palace, the prince all of a sudden just stopped talking. And then he slowly got a look in his eyes, like he was looking off into the distance, like there was no one there. And then his head started turning from side to side, this way and that, and his neck started bobbing. And they looked at him, and his mother, the queen, said, "What's wrong, my son?" And he just looked at her and said, "Huh?" And soon he climbed off his chair, and then, strangely, he started taking off all of his garments. He took off his cape and his doublet and his breeches, until he was totally naked. And his father said, "Son, this is unseemly. We do not do this in the banquet hall. Please, please." But he just climbed under the table. And the king said, "What is wrong with you? What is wrong?" And the prince just looked at his father and went, and under the table, he started pecking at crumbs that had dropped by the diners around. And the king and the queen, they dismissed everyone. Some of the courtiers came and tried to get under the table and get the prince's attention, but he would have nothing to do with it. And so it was. And as the day went on and into the next day, all the prince would do was crawl around under the table, bare naked, plucking and pecking at crumbs on the floor. And they realized this wasn't just a small passing thing. This was something that could last a while. And so the king and the queen put out an appeal. They said that they would pay 1,000 gold coins to anyone who could cure the prince of his avian malady. And so people, wise men, came from all over. First, an apothecary came, and he had unctures and potions and ointments and things made of berries and roots and leaves and teas. And he tried to feed them to the prince, but the prince would have nothing to do with them unless they were put in little dots on the floor. And even then, when he pecked at them, they did nothing. And the apothecary was sent away, and then a physician was called in, and the physician felt the prince's heart, and he lifted his arms, and he felt his temperature, and he tried to stand him up and move his body, but the prince would have nothing of it. He just crouched down on the ground under the table. And so a magician was called for, and the magician did wondrous things. He reached behind the prince's ear and pulled out a hazelnut, and then he took out a little flower and somehow just turned it into a hummingbird. But the prince, the turkey prince, was not impressed. He just and scared away the magician. A philosopher was brought in, and he spoke wise words, asked lofty questions of the prince. But the turkey prince just looked at him and darted around under the table. And finally, a wise wizard came in with a wand, and he had a looking glass, and he had the prince look in the looking glass to see himself, and he uttered magic incantations and waved his wand, but it did nothing. And the king and the queen lost hope that their son would ever be their son again, that he would forever be the Turkey prince, for no one could figure out how to cure him. And all he would do is he would waddle around, waving his wide plumage, and then he would peck around with his wattle hanging down pendulously under his neck. Well, one day, a wise old man with a long gray beard and robes came to the palace gate and said that he wanted to come and try to heal the prince. And he was brought into the king and queen. And the king and queen said, yes, no one else has been able to do it. And the old man said, but you must let me do whatever I want, and you must not question me, and you must follow my instructions. And the king and queen said, yes, we shall. And so the old man came in and he spoke to the courtiers and the advisors and the counselors and gave them instructions. And then he came to the table where the prince was underneath, pecking and waddling around. And the old man removed his robe, he removed his garments, and then he got down on the ground and crawled under the table next to the prince. And he looked at the prince and went, and the prince looked at him and went, and the old man said, and the prince looked at him and said, what are you doing? And the old man said, I'm a turkey. And he said, what are you doing? And the prince said, I'm a turkey too. And the old man said, well, good. May I be a turkey here with you? Well, yes. And so the two of them wandered around, waddling around with their wide plumage and waving their thick pendulous wattles and pecking at everything on the ground. And after a while, the old man, he waved at the helpers, and they brought a plate with some human food on it, some fruits and some breads. And at first the old man looked at it and went, and so the prince did the same. But then the old man pecked at the food, and the prince looked and said, what are you doing? And the old man said, well, I'm just eating this food. And the prince said, but that's human food. We're turkeys. And the old man said, yes, but I can eat this food and still be a turkey. You can too. It's delicious. And so the prince started pecking at the food. And a little while later, the old man waved, and they brought in a couple of shirts, and they put the shirts on the ground. And the old man looked at the shirt and sniffed it and pecked it. And then finally he picked it up and put it on over himself. And the boy said, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, I find that my feathers don't keep me warm enough, so I'm putting on this shirt. But those are human shirts. Humans wear those. We're turkeys. Yes, I know, but we can be turkeys and wear shirts. And so the prince put on a shirt too. And so it was with pants. And so it was when the old man came out from under the table and lifted himself up and started walking around. And the prince said, what are you doing? Well, I'm walking around. My back is a little hurt from bending over, but we're turkeys. Yes, I know, but turkeys, we can walk around. And so it was when the old man sat at the table, when they served food, and the prince realized that turkeys can sit at the table and eat too. And soon enough, the turkey prince was himself again, thanks to the wisdom of the old man, knowing that sometimes you have to just go along with where someone is, meet them where they are, accommodate their needs, and you can help them to see the way. That's the story of the Turkey Prince. Thank you all very much. And I'm going to add in here, I'm going to toss it in the chat as well, that Selina and Howard and Karen and I will be doing a telling of a longer Jewish fairy tale called Elijah's Violin. It's going to be 2 weeks from today. It will be at 9:30 in the morning in India, 11 o'clock at night on the East Coast of the United States. And the rest of you can figure it out in your time zones. But it's going to be a multimodal, interactive, four-person telling of a Jewish folktale. So we hope that you'll join us for that. Thank you very much. Back to you, Rinah.
Thank you. Another classic. Another classic. You really do that turkey very well, Barry.
Thank you.
You had a lot of practice being a turkey?
Yes, people have often called me a turkey. Yes. And I love that story. I know that I and many of us are educators. And so that story has a great lesson for us as educators.
It's true. It's true. Anybody else?
That's fine. We have one last one and we should move on.
Yeah, okay. All right. But I could see you were spotlighted, so you couldn't see, but I could see the faces, and people were just, again, kvelling and really enjoying it, really enjoying it. And for our final number, we have Noa Baum, who is well known to the storytelling community. And Noa has a dual identity. She was born in Israel, grew up in Jerusalem, and now lives in Silver Spring, Maryland. And she's going to tell us her personal story about coming to terms with prayer and Jewish tradition, not unlike Howard. So, but she had her own way of dealing with it. So and Noa is also doing a workshop. Rather, you can blow your own horn at the end of your story and tell people about the workshop you're doing in 2 weeks from now as part of the festival. So take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rinah. Thank you, everyone. Well, very much like Howard, I did not grow up praying. Praying was never part of my upbringing in Jerusalem. Yes, occasionally we lit the Sabbath candles. My father would say the blessing over the wine and the bread on Passover. There's blessings as part of the Seder ritual, the ritual dinner that we do on Passover, but that's just tradition. I never paid attention to the words. They had no meaning. I don't pray. I'm an Israeli. I'm a secular Jew. Praying is for religious people, old people. They go to synagogue and mutter words from ancient prayer books. But my grandmother, Mina, my Savta Mina, was religious. And all through my childhood, I was always with my Savta Mina at every vacation, every summer holiday from the age of 4 until the age of 15. And she lived in a small 1-bedroom flat in Tel Aviv, where above the piano in the tiny bedroom, there was the picture of Yaakov, a young man with a hat of a religious man. Yaakov was her son, my mother's brother. He was killed in the 1948 war when he was 22 years old. My Savta never talks about her son, Yaakov. And my mother, when her brother died, she stopped being religious. In the living room of my Savta's little flat, there is a framed goblin embroidery of a meadow with little specks of red flowers. Judith embroidered that. Judith was her daughter, my mother's sister. She died when she was 23 years old. My Savta never talks about her daughter, Judith. And we always knew that Judith died of a lung disease. And it was decades later, when I was in my late 40s, that I discovered that Judith, who was 15 when her brother was killed, never recovered from his death. And after 8 years of struggle with depression, at the age of 23, took her own life. Is that why there's no pictures of Judith anywhere? The taboo of suicide? My Savta never talks about those she lost. My Savta never cries. My Savta is full of life and energy. When I'm with my Savta, it's gegangen. Let's go. We do things. We go to the beach every day. We go to the market. We go to visit the cousins. My Savta buys me everything. Puffed cream pastries and freshly squeezed juice from street vendors, carrot juice and orange juice and pomegranate juice. And she buys me dresses and patent leather shoes and ribbons for my hair. And my Savta loves to joke. There's one joke that we joke all the time. She grabs my butt and she says, "Is this a große Tuches? Is this a big butt?" And I say, "No, no, you have a große Tuches. Nein, 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 Savta has a sehr große Tuches. Savta has a very, very big butt. When I'm with my Savta, we laugh and we do things. But on Friday evening, because she is religious, my Savta always lights the Sabbath candles. And when I was a little girl, watching her light those candles was a special magical time. I especially love the time right before the candles are lit, when on Friday afternoon, in my mind, my 8-year-old mind, it is the hour of the doves. It's that time on Friday afternoon when suddenly all the buses stop running, and almost instantly a quiet descends on the city. All the hustle and the bustle and the screeching brakes, everything stops. Even conversations become quieter and no one yells. A stillness like no other descends on the world, and it becomes so quiet that suddenly you can hear the doves, the turtle doves. They're always invisible on the eaves beneath the roof. And I love to sit in the enclosed balcony on the folding aluminum lounge chair and listen, embraced by their gentle cooing and the gurgles and the mysterious wonder of their conversations. I'm cradled in peace. That is the hour of the doves. And then the light begins to change, the sun begins to set. And in the kitchen, I hear my Savta preparing the candles in the 3-branched silver candelabra, and I go in to watch. Savta, why are there 3 candles? She shrugs. Zu Gedanken, to remember. And I watch as she covers her head with a sheer white scarf and she lights those candles. And then she circles her hands around them like an ancient sorceress, invoking the light to bring in the light, to dispel the darkness. And then she covers her face and she prays. She pronounces the Hebrew words the way the old people do from the old country with the S instead of the T. And I always think it's so funny because we in Israel, we don't speak Hebrew like that at all. And then her lips continue to move, but I can hardly make out the words. And suddenly, it's not my Savta anymore. And it's a little scary. She's somewhere far away and her lips are whispering names, strange names. Hashik, Ruja, Idale. And hypnotized, I watch a trickle of tears inch its way through her fingers along the grooves of wrinkles of her hand, and my throat tightens. I want to reach out and pull those hands away from her face, make that trickle stop, get my smiling, loving Savta back. But she's so far out of my reach, I dare not get close. Like something holy, I know I'm not allowed to touch. I just stand there holding my breath. And finally, the list ends, always with the same words. Meine Judith, my Judith, and she sighs. Meine Yaakov, my Yaakov, and she sighs again. And then the hands come off the face. She wipes the tears. Her big smile is back. A guten Shabbos, a good Sabbath. Soll sein Shalom, let there be peace. Umein, umein, umein. And she pulls me close into her smothering embrace that smells of 7-Eleven cologne and fried onions and cheap lipstick, and she covers my cheeks and my forehead with kisses. Her arms are the safety and comfort of the world. For years, I witnessed that sacred ritual again and again and again. When I was a teenager, I began to understand that those names she mutters are of all those that she lost. Her mother and father, brothers and sisters, their husbands and wives and children, her cousins, her aunts and uncles, all taken by the Nazis. In my 20s, I still came over to my Savta Mina almost every Friday afternoon, but I didn't stay until the hour of the doves. I was busy, gegangen. I had things to do. I would sit in the cafe with my friends. That's a sacred Friday afternoon ritual in Tel Aviv. Who has time for all this praying and candle lighting? And who needs all this remembering anyway? The year I got married, my Savta turned 89 and started to forget. And a year later, when I left for the United States with my American husband, she no longer recognized me. And 9 months later, when I was 8 months pregnant with my first baby, my Savta Mina died alone in a nursing home. And I was so angry when she died. I was angry that she died. I was angry that she died alone, so far from me, not herself. Why does this happen? Why did she have to lose her mind like that? I did not want to think about my broken heart. I didn't grieve. I didn't cry. There's an ancient story from Syria about a drought. It is told that once there was a terrible drought. The people prayed for rain, but rain didn't come. They fasted, but rain didn't come. And one night the rabbi hears a voice in his dream that says, rain, God will send rain only if Rahamim Chayat will pray for the people. The rabbi wakes up confused. Rahamim Chayat, that's the silent man who sits at the back of the synagogue. He doesn't know how to read. How can he lead the people in prayer? But what choice does he have? He decides to listen to the voice in his dream. And once again, he gathers the congregation to pray. And everyone gathers and they're all facing the bima. That's that elevated space in the synagogue, right in front of Aron HaKodesh. That's the holy ark, the cabinet that holds the scriptures, the sacred scrolls. And that is where the rabbi stands to lead them in prayer. But the rabbi is not standing in front of them. The rabbi is standing amongst them. And suddenly the rabbi stands up and he says, Ya'aleh v'yavo, come forth and pray in the name of the people, Rachamim ben David, Rachamim the son of David. Rachamim at the back of the synagogue looks up, mortified. His name to be called before the holy ark. Trembling, he whispers in the rabbi's ear, Rabbi, you know I cannot read. Please do not shame me. The rabbi said, Rachamim, today you are shliach tzibur. You are the representative of the congregation. It is you who must pray for us. Rachamim asks permission to bring something that he needs to be able to pray. And after a few minutes, he returns to the synagogue with a clay jar that has 2 spouts in it. Still trembling, he steps up on the bima to face the people and he says, I ask that you all pray with all your heart. And as is the custom, everyone rises. And Rachamim turns and all face the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark. And as is the custom, everyone chants the words at this moment where the Holy Ark is opened and the scrolls, the scriptures are revealed. And now it is the time for the leader to lead them in prayer. But Rachamim is not holding a prayer book, he's holding the clay jar. And he says, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, I don't know how to read. I'm a poor man. It is hard. Sometimes I cannot feed my children. When they are hungry, they cry. And when they cry, my heart breaks. I collect my tears in this jar. It is all I have. I asked my wife to bury me with this jar, but now I offer it to you, Ribono shel olam. If this jar of tears is not enough, I am willing to break it before you. And at that moment, there was a flash of lightning and a crash of thunder, and rain began to fall. I didn't cry for many, many years for my Savta Mina who was gone. And then one day, it was a Friday afternoon, but I was far, far from the hour of the doves. I was living in Davis, California. The sun was just beginning to set, and it was a quiet summer afternoon. My daughter had just turned 4. My son was 2. And it was so quiet that suddenly I heard the cooing of a dove. And I found myself taking 2 candles and putting them in the candlesticks I bought at a garage sale and lighting them. And I had no idea what the words of the prayer were, so I just circled my hands like she did, and I covered my face. And suddenly I was there, standing at the kitchen table, watching my Savta Mina bring in the light to dispel the darkness. And the tears came, and I let them trickle through my fingers. And I said, Brucha Shechina b'libeinu, Brucha Shabbat b'veitenu, Shabbat Shalom. Blessed is the female spirit of God in our heart. Blessed is the Sabbath in our home. May it be a Sabbath of peace. And I kissed my children. And you know, I've been doing it ever since. Today I know the words of the prayer and I chant them, but I always add those words that I made up, and I feel close to my Savta Mina when I pray. And sometimes I offer my tears. Shabbat Shalom.
Eric, I think you need to take over. I'm too full to even speak.
Okay. Well,
was it that bad, Rinah?
Very beautiful. Karen, did you want to say? Karen?
Very.
My heart is full and overflowing with your story, Noah. I'm just incredibly moved. And I want to share something with you because my sister is here from Michigan, and we both share a memory that you just shared, and I've never heard anyone else share it. And that's the memory of our mother lighting Shabbat candles and sobbing and reciting the names with her hands over her face. I've never heard anyone else mention that. So I asked my mother once, why do you recite those names and sob when you light the candles? And she said, I've decided in my life that I can only mourn at certain times and then I need to move on. So I choose this moment for my mourning. And then when I take my hands away from my eyes, it's Shabbat and it's time to celebrate, and I move on. And I share that with you because I feel such a connection to your grandmother, Mina, through my mother, and my sister is here right now as well. it's just such a beautiful moment, and how those tears transformed into yours. So I just want to thank you for kindling my own memory of that incredible experience of Shabbat. Thank you.
It was absolutely beautiful. And what Karen said is so true, except she didn't add that after she cried, she would go into the bathroom and she would get one little sheet of toilet paper, wipe her eyes, put it in her apron, and then move on.
Wow.
I'd like to say, in listening to all of these stories, and they're all so different. We had personal stories and we had folklore. That I'm seeing a current running through of the value of simplicity and humility, and the simple moments, whether it's Howard's version of laying tefillin, or Beulah's angelic voice, or the empty box that carries wisdom, or the turkey prince, or the poor man with the jar of tears, or all those robbers and thieves. That seems to be a theme that runs through our faith and our tradition. That is the valuing of the smallest and the least and the simplest.
Yeah, and also what comes from the heart is what's important, right? And that's also was the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. So important that what's written in the prayer books is good, but what comes from the heart is what reaches the gates of heaven.
Yes, especially what comes from a broken heart, right? That's what reaches the gates.
There's the Rabbi Nachman said that there's nothing so whole as a broken heart.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Well, we did it. I think even with all of the correspondence back and forth and knowing the stories that were going to be told, I had no idea how deep and how moving this experience was going to be. And for many people and for many different cultures. And I am so grateful for this opportunity for me to connect with my culture and to be able to share it with people all over the world. It's just phenomenal. Thank you, Eric, for making this possible.
Thank each one of you. Thank you, Selina. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Yoel. Thank you, Rinah. Thank you, Barry. And thank you, Noah.
Thank you, Eric, for making this possible and for inviting us.
Of course.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Rinah, for the time you spent trying to get everything organized and put together. We really appreciate all your efforts in making the order work. Thank you.
It did. It worked.
Today. It worked.
Yes.
It worked.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.